Hello, and thank you for joining us on Hello, Mayor. I'm City of Las Vegas Mayor Carolyn Goodman. Over the past few shows, we focused on how businesses and local governments have handled the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we want to focus on how nonprofit organizations have weathered this storm at a time when our community needs them the most. A little later, I'll be joined by Brian Burton, CEO of 3 Square Food Bank. But first, I'm joined by the most wonderful man, Deacon Tom Roberts of Catholic Charities of Southern Nevada. Thank you so much for being here. I look at you and I think, my God, it was just a little bit like a couple of years ago. And how many years have you taken on our Catholic Charities?
I've been the CEO, Mayor, for 8.5 years after a 6-month volunteer stint.
And prior to that, I know you've got a couple of degrees.
I grew up in the Midwest, and I have a BS and BA and an MBA in finance, and I was also an executive in the casino industry for 27 years before I pulled out and landed at Catholic Charities.
So isn't it wonderful? And I know you followed our dear, dear man, Monsignor Leary. Had you been close to him during your time that you were in the hotel industry?
I knew Monsignor when I was ordained as a permanent deacon. I would often see him at parishes because he would help out with services on the weekends. Never in a million years did I ever think that Monsignor would pass away so unexpectedly, and then that I would step in as a volunteer to help during the crisis. And then after a few months, the bishop and the board asked if I would stay on as the CEO, and that was 8 years ago. So it's been a very quick and busy 8 years.
But you have really shouldered something so enormous and have made such strides ahead, and as a social service, a leadership role you've taken in our community and done so much for so many. What's the population you serve? I know you do not just serve the Catholic portion of our community. Could you speak a little bit about your population you serve?
I like to say that even though we're called Catholic Charities, we don't check religious ID cards. We serve anybody who needs help and hope. About 4,000 people a day are touched by Catholic Charities of Southern Nevada. People that come to the campus for food every day, whether that's through the daily community meal that's offered. The food pantry is a busy place, and it got busier during the pandemic. And then our Meals on Wheels program, which I know you're familiar with, now servicing more than 2,400 seniors every day with food and resources. In this case, now vaccinations. So we're a busy place, 16 programs and services, overnight services for men in a shelter, day services for families, housing services, immigration services, migration and refugee services.
And adoption.
Adoptions, as you know, was our very first program back in 1941. And as we celebrate soon the 80th anniversary of Catholic Charities, that was what started it all. And we are still, by the grace of God, working in the adoptions field 80 years later.
Isn't that the most incredible thing? And of course, here my husband and I are Jewish, and we were so fortunate to touch with Catholic Charities those many years ago and had the most beautiful family, newborn babies, because of you. And so it brings me to tears how important and pervasive your services are and how many lives you've touched. What do you think has been, for all of us, it's been a challenging time, but what in particular has been the most challenging part, do you feel, of this COVID for Catholic Charities?
I think we all realize in any city that's growing, and our city has always been a growth city, there's always a difference between those that are seeing the benefits of growth and those that are struggling. We've seen more distance, more polarity between those that are doing well and have done reasonably well during the pandemic and those that continue to struggle. So the numbers of need has gone up, and therefore the services, the resources have been strained. Thank God we've never missed a day of service despite the pandemic. And like so many businesses and so many of us, we've had to reinvent ourselves and the work that we do through a very dedicated staff and wonderful donors and wonderful community leaders that have supported us so that we can really be the safety net for those that are most in need.
Now, the central location is in the heart of downtown at Las Vegas Boulevard and Formaster. You, I know, have always counted so heavily on the community, not only for the financial piece, but most importantly for the volunteer service. What happened to that volunteer group when this pandemic hit us?
Initially, we had to suspend all volunteer activities for the safety of the volunteers and for the safety of the clients and the staff. We have reverted those volunteer services to be focused on some things that folks can do at home, like building hygiene kits. People have put welcome notes that we can insert into the meals for Meals on Wheels. People have made masks for us. So while the on-site volunteering has been suspended, and we hope that will come back soon, we've continued to offer ways for people to virtually volunteer and help us provide the resources that we need to provide every single day for folks that have no place else to go.
Well, as they come in for dining, as our homeless population continues throughout all day long wanting to have nutrition, be able maybe to be part of your pantry and pick up food themselves, how did you man that without a volunteer staff?
It put additional strain on the staff. But the staff came together. I'm so proud and humbled to be a servant leader. The word deacon is the Greek word diakonia, which is the Greek word for service. So for me to be a deacon and serving at Catholic Charities, and then to have others that work with me serve, is a beautiful gift that we've been able to give our community, because this is home for all of us. So we've had to ramp up our staffing. Everyone had to be good utility infielders, basically. Wow. Everybody had to be all hands on deck to do whatever needed to happen. I was stuffing bags with food. I was serving food into the containers. We built this beautiful outdoor dining pavilion called what I call Catholic Charities under the big top in our parking lot. And it has been the receptacle for lots of services that we would normally provide inside. The dining room that you're very familiar with was moved from the inside to the outside so that we could create more social distance and safety. So the clients have continued to receive that community meal underneath the dining pavilion with 6 feet of distance in a clean, sanitized environment that's also acted as a day shelter for anyone to get out of the elements or to have a place to go, and also the check-in for the overnight shelter. That overnight shelter has been reconfigured and enhanced with safety protocols so that we can continue to offer a safe place for men to go, which often is the recommendation, the action plan or the insertion point for people to come to Catholic Charities is either food or shelter, and then we can avail them of other services.
So you work with other organizations, social services downtown, as well as throughout the community. And of course, I know the city has been supportive as well. But are you open 24/7?
We are. I like to say we're like a little hotel casino without the gambling. We have a big food and beverage program. We have a big overnight program. We have a lot of traffic. There's no locks on the doors. So we are providing services 24/7. And we have such great collaborations with the city of Las Vegas, with Brian Burton and 3 Square. We simply would not be what we're doing if it wasn't for our friends and the guardian angels that we find through the supporters that support 3 Square, that ends up supporting us, and all the other folks in the corridor of hope. We all work very closely together because we're serving the same population. And as a business person, I want to focus on our core competencies. Let us do what we do well, and let us partner with others so they can do what they do well. And I think at the end, as you and I've spoken, the message of philanthropy is both efficiency, productivity, and compassion all rolled together. That's when it really works.
Well, because so much is centered in the heart of downtown here on Formaster, as I mentioned, in Las Vegas Boulevard, do you feel what you have created there with the other social services in the city is something that we can replicate in other areas of Southern Nevada, so it isn't all thrust into that one area, or not? Do you think that we're getting there?
We've spoken about the need for addressing mental and behavioral health. My experience at Catholic Charities is people don't get homeless overnight, and they don't get out of it overnight. And the big reason why they become homeless and stay homeless often is mental illness that then forms addictions because they start using drugs and alcohol as Band-Aids and as medication. If we can begin to thoughtfully address the reasons why people became homeless, both downtown and creating satellite opportunities in other parts of the valley, our goal is to get people back to independence. We want people to eventually get out of Catholic Charities, get back on their feet, get back to work, and get back with their families. And I do think that's a prototype that can be replicated across the valley, perhaps in smaller pockets where we have needs, so that it doesn't put any burden on one certain area. And it also addresses the fact that the transportation issue for some folks is going to prevent them from coming to the campus. So fortifying our campus and creating pods across the valley, I think, is a legitimate option to create more results.
And do you see an increase in, and it just breaks my heart, in youth population homeless? How has that affected you in particular in this one area?
I like to say that we have these two pivotal groups, seniors and youth, that are often the silent sufferers. They often seem to fall through the cracks. We've seen an increase in demand on both of those populations. We partner with other organizations in Southern Nevada in order to make sure that when we get young people to come to us, we can hand them off gently to other organizations. You know that our Meals on Wheels program not only provides the food, but even provides pet food for clients that have a pet, so that those clients aren't serving and sharing their food with their pets. And during the crisis, we haven't been able to get into the home, but at the threshold of the residence, we're still checking on that client, and now checking with them to see if they'd like to be vaccinated. And over 2,000 of our Meals on Wheels clients have identified the interest in vaccination, so we're starting that now.
What is, having traveled with you in these wonderful vans and your drivers that know everybody's name in the senior community where they're delivering, what is the population of seniors that are not on the wait list, that actually are served with Meals on Wheels? And then what about those on the wait list?
2,400 are currently being served, and when I started 8 years ago, we were at about 700, and now we're at 2,400. And so, and I wish I could say we've tripled our revenue, but we haven't. We've had to find efficiency in collaboration with organizations like Three Square to bring the cost of the meal down so we could serve more meals. But we also still have 800 on a waiting list.
That's doubled.
It has doubled. And we get some funding from the federal government. We get some funding from the state government. But as you mentioned, a large percentage of our funding is private funding. And that every dollar that we get in, the meal is about $6 all in. That's the preparation of the meal, the case management, the nutritionist that reviews the menu, the executive chef that prepares the food, the drivers, all in. It's about $6 a meal. That's a very effective and efficient way, frankly, to keep these folks that want to be independent for as long as they can, because the alternative, we know, is probably assisted living. That is a lot more expensive than $6 a day. So not only is it the right thing to do, as Pope Francis would say, the both and, it is also the efficient thing to do to help people stay independent with dignity and compassion and keep them out of assisted living for as long as we can.
And you are helping other organizations because you found the efficient way to get these Meals on Wheels prepared. And then how many buses or trucks, vehicles do you have that are delivering?
We have about 13 in our fleet. They go out every day. And as you said, the drivers become like family members because sadly some of these seniors don't have family or don't see folks much, and certainly during the pandemic, they've been so isolated. So that driver acts as a human lifeline to that client. And as you know, they know the drivers know them.
It's such a beautiful...
And it helps us to also help keep track of what's happening in that home.
But the emotion for the individual, they're so excited. It is a member of their family coming to visit them, because this is a limited time for us at this moment. I really want to talk about a dream that you have and the needs as you see them in this 80th year? As you know, all those years there have been people, and we all stand on the shoulders of those who've been before us. You said that earlier. What are the dreams? What do you see happening next? Where are you going?
As you know, by being the mayor of this great city, my home city, where I raised my children, we have to continue to invest in infrastructure in order to keep the agency viable. So we're undergoing a campus renovation now. We've restarted the engines for the renovation. They went on pause during the COVID crisis. So we're going to renovate and refortify all the public and private spaces so that there is an infrastructure to keep this work going. I would like to see more behavioral mental health services connected with us in the project at the courtyard with what the city is doing. I think as we continue to be tandem, working side by side,
yes,
we will really address why people are homeless. And then building some more affordable housing. We have a plan next year to begin to build more affordable housing with office space for mental and behavioral health services inside the building. So folks that are homeless that get placed in those apartments will just drop downstairs to their appointments, which eliminates the transportation factor and also
so
the no-show
critical.
factor. That's how you get people stabilized enough to move back into independence. That's always been our goal. And I think we are on the cusp of that. And I do think the pandemic, I hope and pray that it's created some level of human equilibrium.
Yes.
Everybody has been affected by this. I hope the compassion that comes out of this pandemic will allow us to be supported by public and private enterprises so we can build affordable housing and put a dent in this chronic homelessness that we all know is pervasive across our city.
But as you well know, so many of our homeless have been homeless for so long, they're not ready to go into housing yet. They have to relearn those skills about how do you take care of a room, how do you make sure something is sanitized properly. So are you planning this right now, this next stage, right there on the campus, the Catholic Charities campus, or are you going to need extra land? I mean, we have an opportunity here to reach so many people. Where is the housing element going to be?
It is the both and. So it is continuing to create those foundational stabilization services at the main campus in coordination with the courtyard and the Corridor of Hope partners, and then going outside the campus because we are a bit landlocked to other parts of the community, again, where the need is, where there are deserts of need for housing.
Well, the encampments.
Yes.
Now that is a different group of people because I know our MORE team and so much of the collaborative is out in the camps. And when we're out there trying to get our individuals to come in, so often they don't want to come in. And so that is a real challenge. But once they do come in for a meal, how do you keep a homeless person getting involved?
Once we can identify what their main cause is, and again, I'd say, as you know, so many of them come in with mental illness and behavioral health. If we can provide some stability to those folks, and those that are not really in really bad shape, that can move into our work program and we call the Renewing Hope program, which is the program that you just spoke about, which gets people a chance to reinvent and retrain themselves and own their own responsibility. Staying in the shelter, having their own bunk, getting a job, getting stabilized at the agency so that they're ready to move into these apartments. So many of them, as you know through the homeless survey, are chronically homeless.
Right.
And if we could build just Catholic Charities of 100 units a year, and over 5 years build 500 units, that's a significant amount of inventory that could really address some of these folks that we can stabilize, but then if they're stabilized, where do they go? And if they don't get housing, they fall right back into that.
Well, and
that
a
cycle.
job. Now, is there any thought from where you sit, from this most involved experience and background, of doing this in a high rise, of not high rise, but a 4 or 5 story, much like a dormitory, in a college or on some campus. Would that in fact work? Because then you can provide the job of cleaning and doing so many other things, answering calls or helping somebody take food. There's so many ways that we can pay these individuals who find a home or a place that's safe. Does anything work that is more than, you're just having small little apartments everywhere? Can you do anything in a multi-floor campus?
One of the things I did when I was in the casino industry is I was a real estate developer. So I'm always a struggling real estate developer. My plan would be to create a campus environment that would master plan phases of these, what I'll call short towers, 4 or 5 story construction, would be considered stick construction or wood construction because it's more affordable, but it's still very viable. And to start with 50 or 100 units, but get a piece of land that we could master plan.
Nearby, I hope.
Nearby, other towers or other short towers to add to that community as we get federal and state financing. I think there is no silver bullet, as you know, to addressing these issues. But if Catholic Charities, as one organization, can attack that problem with this permanent supportive housing solution with, let's say, 500 units over the course of the next 5 years, and the city and the county and other organizations with the state are doing similar things, these are real solutions that are going to take a problem that I like to say, it's like turning an aircraft carrier in the water. That turn is going to happen slowly, but it can be very deliberate. We want to continue to provide the stabilization services and focus on permanent supportive housing. So we're going to continue as we go forward to do the both and.
Well, and to me, one of the things is we look for workforce development. We keep talking about technology, critical. But to me, it's the social services. We need to talk about that so we can get people involved in being the support system individual to help these people and to help generally in the needs of the social venue, in my opinion. I know we're landlocked here in the city of Las Vegas. There's plenty of land out in North Las Vegas, and then as we go down towards state line, but BLM, a lot of it. Is there a plan that is being worked on by yourself and others? I know we've been talking about taking a look at the Gene facility for those with severe mental challenges because they need the compassion and the support to have the hygiene, the nutrition, the exercise, things to do. Because the hospitals, it seems to be as caring and as committed they are with the COVID-19 and such pressure on them all, is when someone who has severe mental illness ends up in a hospital bed, where do they go then?
Yeah, that is the big problem, as you know, is not only that's not a permanent solution, it's also a very expensive solution.
Oh, of course.
To put someone into an ER bed for 72 hours, when if they were placed into a treatment center that stabilizes their mental and behavioral health, I think we have to have the courage to use the word homelessness, mental and behavioral health in the same sentence in order to say the people that are in these conditions over a long period of time, many of them struggle with these issues. And so what we've said is if we can partner with healthcare and managed care organizations that are doing these services and give them a place to do them within these towers, let us collaborate and not reinvent the wheel, but bring in the partners that can provide those services. We'll provide the clients and the venue. And we think that's a real solution track that we can make a real difference going forward.
Well, to me in Southern Nevada, we've done so many things that are innovative, and we've worked so hard in climate control. There's so many things that we've been recognized for that people really don't understand or know. But I know we are on the cusp of being able to really come up with something, because our homeless population, if you would articulate, who's in our homeless population? Who are those individuals? I mean, I see them obviously are veterans. We have severely challenged, mentally challenged. We have the drug, alcohol addicted personality. Then we have a family who's just lost their jobs because of COVID. Then you have the elderly who, for one reason or another, and you also have those who've been in the hospital. And I know we have this respite new facility adjacent but they need a place to go after that stay. So I think we're on the cusp, and probably you and the other leaders in our social services, really, we meet so much, we have so many binders, and everybody loves a meeting, but we need results. And you're showing those results. So you must be in a position to go to the next step. How do we do that?
I'm very optimistic that we are heading in the right direction. Again, I think the fact that the pandemic has really created a situation where so many people that were near homelessness fell into homelessness because the safety net of 1 or 2 paychecks went away.
Yes.
And so I believe and pray that there's an awareness that people that would be considered stabilized in our economy have slipped backwards, not very far, but far enough to fall into homelessness. Those are the people that will benefit from the housing initiatives that I articulated. Those are the people that take advantage of the food
Right
pantry.
now.
Right now,
They're
today.
ready, with help,
Yeah.
to get back into
Yeah.
that housing.
Yeah.
Is that housing there?
Yeah. Some of the, as you know, the moratorium
Yes.
has helped keep folks in their housing a little bit longer, but we all know we need more inventory. So again, it is a combination, in my opinion, of continuing to provide the stabilization services that we provide and that others provide, and focus on permanent supportive housing solutions that include these mental behavioral health pods of service. Because as you said, you can't simply put someone that's been living on the street with mental illness into an apartment or into a job, because that won't work unless you address the reason why they got homeless. So we believe that if you address those things tandemly with housing and stabilization services, that's a roadmap of recovery for those in the downtown corridor, but can also be replicated. Doesn't have to be the size of or the depth of a facility like we have at 8 acres, but that's a roadmap for success. And I'm optimistic that we're heading in the right direction.
Well, and I look at the population, and they each need something different. And so the ones I do recall when President Obama was in office, it was housing first. Well, it's great for the right people that are ready for it or have just come out of it, but it's not for the whole population of the homeless. So the reality, those are the most severely affected and that really need a concentrated placement. How we're going to continue to follow up, and who's going to be the compassionate caretaker on that population as you go forward. I know we've been so successful. One of the big ones is Share Village, the Veterans Village, and how they're working with the social services. But I think it's time for us to really go ahead and look at these groups again, the children, the elderly, those coming out of the hospital, and figure out a pathway for each one of them. And I know, because of your 8 years of what you've been doing, we are in a position for now. So who would we pull on? Do we pull on the hospital? Who do we pull on to this?
We know the state of Nevada Health and Human Services has skin in this game, right? They have to, because they're charged with the mental protection for all of us. So again, I look at this as a collaboration mechanism. You have the state with HHS. You have the city and the county that have land availability, and even during this COVID crisis, hopefully in this next generation of funding, we can have the courage to set aside some funds for permanent supportive housing. And then you bring in organizations like ours that understand the client and understand the needs. And I think as we continue to collaborate, and I mentioned it before, is if we pull on people's competencies, let us do what we do well. Let us collaborate with others. So that we don't reinvent the wheel and we don't create duplication of services. And as you and I have talked for years from your prior days before you became mayor, the fundraising and the work that you did at the school, focusing on people's efficiency so that the message of philanthropy is an efficient one. People want to donate to a winning program. Catholic Charities is a winning program, but if we collaborate together, we can do better things together than we can separately.
Nobody could have said it better, and unfortunately, you know, you come on and the world opens up. Somebody did smile down on you, and we're very blessed. And so, Deacon Tom Roberts, I hope you'll be back again. We have so much more to talk about, and I can't thank you enough from everybody whose life you have changed for the better. And even if you've just held out a hand to them, you're a wonderful human being, and we're the world filled with Tom Roberts.
Well,
Thank you.
Please let me say thank you to the many donors, the many benefactors, and the many private citizens like you and your husband that have supported us over the years with your time and your talents and treasures. We would not be where we are today without being embraced by Southern Nevada and the city of Las Vegas. And I'm a servant leader that's humbly grateful, and I hope you'll have me back.
I will, because we have much more to go. And how do they get in touch with Catholic Charities? We're going to close with that. So if you want to volunteer or you want to contribute to the great work they're doing, what is your
I think we might have one of the easiest email addresses going. It's www.catholiccharities.com. And that email address will open you up to a window of how to learn more, how to get services if you need them, how to volunteer, and how to donate. It's all on the website. And thank you again for allowing me to come and visit with you this morning. It's special for me.
Thank you, Deacon Tom, for being here today. We're going to take a quick break and come back with 3 Square Food Bank CEO and President Brian Burton. He will share how they handled the increased need for help.
Hey, must be super fun to ride that bike.
It's awesome to go so fast you blow past every other car on the road. But you know what wouldn't be so awesome? You getting you killed going too fast.
If you won't listen to anyone else, at least listen to you. Save yourself. Ride safe. Paid for by the Nevada Departments of Public Safety and Transportation.
The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention reminds you to care for your mental health in the face of uncertainty. Focus on what's in your control versus what's not. Do what helps you feel a sense of safety. Remind yourself to stay in the present and stay connected with others. Reach the crisis text line by texting TALK to 741-741 or call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. We're in this together, and help is always available.
Welcome back. COVID-19 pandemic turned our world upside down for hundreds of thousands. It meant job loss and little to no income. As you can imagine, a tremendous amount of responsibility fell on our local food banks, including 3 Square. Fortunately, I'm joined by CEO Brian Burton, a dear friend, and he and I came into position the same year, 2011.
I think the same week that year.
I think so too. In the old city hall you came to visit, and well, you have wonderful people. I know Jody Tyson's still with you. Frank Woodbeck, still your board chair?
Woodbeck is our board chair. He's phenomenal. We've got a fantastic team.
You absolutely do.
What a great group to get to work with every day.
Now, I have been fortunate enough to be invited out to speak to and thank the many volunteers you have. But if you go back in history to, what was it, 2014-15, Eric Hilton was the seed money, I think, Julie Murray.
2007.
2007, Julie Murray.
Poonam Mather.
Elaine Wynn,
yes,
and a couple of others that just said.
Engelstad Foundation, Lindsay Foundation, Reynolds. It was an incredible rallying point for this community, and the funders and donors and volunteers all came together.
Understanding, because when I first was invited out to see what you do, you had mentioned to me, I kept saying, where does this mountain of food come from that supports the food bank? If you can go back a little bit, but then bring us up to the supplies that you're getting in this wonderful community.
Absolutely. Well, 3 Square started in 2007, as you said, and we had a fantastic rocket start. Feeding America really wrapped their arms around us and gave us loaned executives, helped us start overnight. As you remember, the economy was starting to tank back then. And without a food bank, Southern Nevada was going to be in a world of hurt. So Three Square brought together all of the leaders that built the infrastructure. The county donated our first building, and we've turned out to be the fastest growing food bank in the history of Feeding America, which is a testament to the generosity of this community.
Well, and you have these wonderful hotels or strip and
Oh.
downtown hotels that turn over supplies.
Yes, we have a hot food rescue program that we've conducted with some of the hotels to save that wonderful, beautiful food that they sometimes over prepare that never gets served. But the volunteer armies that come down there pre-pandemic and hopefully again soon, the hotels just bring so much energy and life and support financially. I can't say enough about them.
To get your arms around something like that. And so when we understand that we were shut down, all the hotels closed, that food,
Yeah.
that backup, those deliveries coming in from around
Yeah.
the country, what happened?
Mayor, that first 5 days of the shutdown, it was heart-stopping. They emptied out all of their kitchens on the Strip, and all that food flowed into our docks, and it was 24/7, and it was the most gorgeous, high-quality food I've ever laid my eyes on, and we were able to immediately repurpose that, get that out to these long lines of emergency drive-through distributions that Three Square had to pop up overnight, 24 of those locations across the city, that the people were so thrilled because half of the folks that were in those lines, as you mentioned, some of those lines were 4 miles long, winding down Sahara there at Palace Station. Those folks were so delighted at the quality of that food that the hotels donated. They weren't expecting that. And that gave them a lift at a time when they felt very afraid and anxious, not knowing, the schools were closed, didn't have a job. Their whole world had capsized.
How did you handle physically? Who did you call upon, or did the hotels send their employees to unload and sent their trucks all at once? How did you manage that? That is such an enormous undertaking.
It was all hands on deck. We had the infrastructure actually to handle this. Three Square was as well positioned, I think, as we could have been in terms of freezer, cooler space, warehouse space. We had already made plans to increase our capacity. We have 140 employees. We have many, many volunteers. People came out of the woodwork to help us. And the supply chain immediately was broken and bruised, as you remember. We didn't know how long the food now was going to take to bring in from California and Arizona. And so that definitely bridged us for 2 or 3 weeks there when we were biting our nails. But yeah, we were able to rescue that food, get it out to people in need, and what a difference that made. It was literally life-giving.
My husband and I were out in the Southwest that one morning, and coming down Sahara from the west to the east, there was this line of cars, just one after another, just sitting there, and I thought, what could that possibly be? There was not one honking of a car. There weren't people out screaming and running around.
No.
Nobody flashing lights or doing anything. And as we kept driving, just the line moved so slowly, inching along, and then we got to Palace Station, and of course, Three Square.
Well, this has been a time of grief and loss for so many people and disruption, and thank you for your leadership during this tumultuous time, because it's been very essential. But it's also been the best of times that you've seen 15,000 brand new donors give to Three Square. I know Catholic Charities has been the recipient, as Deacon Tom mentioned, of so much new philanthropy. And we do pride ourselves in being efficient and good stewards. 94 cents of every dollar goes directly into programs and buying food at 3 Square.
Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, 94 cents of every dollar goes directly into programs, so the overhead is skinny. We're constantly working on that. $1 can create 3 meals.
How do you like that? $1, 3 meals.
Yeah, that's a leverage that Eric Hilton, our founder, was a businessman. He insisted on best practices and to run it like a business, so we've been faithful to that. But we're just going to continue to improve, expand, morph into a new type of food bank that is going to continue to do a lot of direct service, which traditionally most of our food goes through agency partners. We still have 185 of those that are
Wow.
heroes on the front lines doing that work, touching lives, providing other services besides food to help people reclaim their lives from poverty. But 3 Square will continue to do that, as well as add on a hybrid model of continuing some of these mobile and drive-through distributions, because the need is so much bigger now. It went up 57% overnight
Well, and
during the
you
pandemic.
go out in the counties as well.
We do.
And I remember when you and I came together early on. In fact, I was running for office, and Christian Kiliani and I
Yep.
were at loggerheads, but agreed on a couple of things. And one of them was to get our leaders of our social services together, so you could share information among yourselves. And these were the top people, the Brian Burtons, the Deacon Toms, sitting together and see how you could help. And lo and behold, right off the top, the first thing, if you would just mention how you stepped in with Deacon Tom.
It's flourishing. Yeah, Catholic Charities and 3 Square, for whatever reason, were not in simpatico at that time. And so we immediately started saying, why aren't we working together more? And suddenly Deacon Tom steps in the aftermath of the Monsignor's passing. And he, as a businessman, he understood the benefits of working together. And so the floodgates opened, and now Catholic Charities is our largest distributor. They gave us their Heart of Hope Award the next year, one of the great honors of my lifetime. And it's a great story of how partnership and relationships, they don't have to stay broken. They can heal. If you're doing it for the community benefits from that. So yeah, that's a great story. The CEO exchange that you started continues and thrives, and the community is so much better off today because of that.
Well, and you created a food pantry, the Dignity. Now, could you explain that? The food, that small little food pantry services how many people?
Well, what we're doing right now is just doing a lot of piloting. We do have a lot of our agencies now that are looking out at mobile distributions. The Just One project is a great example of that. Very nimble, very full of heart and great resources. They go out and do probably 30 mobile distributions for us, and they touch so many people that normally wouldn't have access. And of course, the Senior Hunger Program is a big
that
new
one,
Yeah.
certainly I do have that here, your new facility. I had the good fortune to be invited out, and Frank was there, Frank Woodbeck, who's their board chair, and of course Jody and the team. I mean, what a team. Everybody just loves how it feels to be part of your team, and it's a wonderful experience. But could you describe that senior
the
facility?
Senior Hunger Campus was on the plans long before the pandemic showed up, and we were able to acquire a third warehouse over on Craig Road, about a half a mile from our current campus on Pecos and Craig. And that's a brand new facility, 32,000 square feet. We had a generous donor come in and fund a senior hunger program. It's already become a model for the nation. We've got 4,500 seniors during this pandemic that have received home-delivered groceries. It's different than Meals on Wheels. Catholic Charities does a tremendous job at that. But for folks who can still prepare some meals in their apartment and just need some help, getting the groceries, they've signed up for this program, Golden Groceries.
How do they, if someone's watching right now that would love to participate, how do they do that?
They can easily go to or just call our main number, 702-644-3663, 644-FOOD. Maybe we can put it on the screen a little later.
Okay.
Or 3square.org if they have internet. But they can sign up for that program, and it's free. We publicized it over the television earlier this year. Seniors are the next big wave of folks that are going to be really at risk of food insecurity in our country. Many of them already are, and they're some of the last to speak up, as you know. It's not a loud generation. It's more of a quiet and reserved. A lot of pride and dignity there. So we want to make sure these seniors that are have need, because so many of the diseases and problems that we face as we age are nutritionally related. Hypertension, diabetes,
Right.
so many of these things can be controlled largely through diet.
And exercise.
So, yeah, and
Everything.
exercise.
Right.
And so it's an exciting program, and that warehouse is primarily dedicated for that senior hunger program, and it'll be around for years to come, and we're just going to continue to find what we call the unconnected, because so many folks do tend to maybe only get out to see the doctor or to have very limited contact. And so we're partnering with healthcare providers, we're partnering with all sorts of senior housing groups to make sure that we're touching and reaching all of the folks that need that service.
What about, and I don't know if you do anything with, but the number of 15,000 homeless youth in the Clark County School District?
Yeah.
That population, as they go to school,
Yep.
at least for some stability of warmth or cooling or whatever,
Yep.
do you also work with the school district in this area? I mean, I know I've had your food too.
Sure.
When you have these thank yous for your, how many volunteers pre-pandemic were you?
50,000, probably the largest platform in the state. And for
Wow.
people who want to know, we are making plans currently to bring folks back into the facilities. We're going to do the summer food service program this summer,
wonderful.
and it will be done very carefully with all the safety protocols. But I've talked to so many people who are just missing volunteering, and they're eager to get back.
We get calls all the time.
Oh,
I
yeah.
want to give.
Yeah.
I want to help. How can I do it? It
And of
makes
course,
my life
still
significant.
we do 16 drive-through distribution, so those are volunteer opportunities out in the community every single day. But to answer your question,
About
we have
the children.
Yeah, the children, when the school shut down, our childhood nutrition program went on pause. That was heartbreaking. So we ramped up the amount of food that we're giving out to families to help hopefully cover that unmet need. But we are now, we partner with Project 150 with a partnership for homeless youth, of course with the school district. We're there every time that we can get an access point and a partnership with them. We fully exploit that. And we do have food available. It's not that the food is in short supply. With the government assistance we've had this past year during the pandemic, and with the existing distribution channels we have through Feeding America, we're tied into beautiful partnerships with Kraft, General Mills, the food banks in Central California that are food rich, send their surplus our way. Nogales, Riverside in California. We have an unbelievable network, and it brings the food in here for pennies on the dollar. 40% of it's fresh produce. This isn't your grandmother's food bank. It's not just, beans and rice, even though the staples are always part of it.
Necessary, sure.
There's a much more attention now to what we call food to encourage. 70% of the food that passes through our warehouse now has high nutritional value. So we don't want to just fill bellies. We really want to create nutritious meals so that people, particularly children and seniors, can develop in a healthy way and really have the best food possible. So.
Do you, and I never saw it when I've been out there the times I have, frozen? Do you have frozen
Yeah, we do have
goods?
frozen. We have some gigantic freezers. So that's where, a lot of the meat and protein is stored. And we have gigantic coolers. And that new senior housing campus, to actually install that freezer in there, they had to do extraordinary foundation work so that those temperature differences did not create a movement in the ground. There's a special process in the desert, so it was quite elaborate. And we're so grateful the Ingolstadt Foundation helped us to cover those expenses.
Family,
what would we
so
do
generous.
what would our community do without the Ingolstadt family?
Yes, they have just been, it's so wonderful, but not only that, because Mr. Engelstadt's daughter is so hands-on too, and
Chris,
has such, she's just
and her
is
son
incredible.
Sean, he's
yes,
helping
now.
with that.
And are there opportunities for high school students to come out and
There
do
will
the
be.
volunteer?
There will be
once we get back.
Yeah, there will be this summer. I'd say after June 1st, things are going to ease up quite a bit if we keep on this good trajectory that we're on.
What do you think while this has been just the most challenging of times, and for some it's so depressingly awful, and for all of us as we've lost friends and relatives, but from everything bad has to come something good where you learn. What do you think Three Square has gained in the learning process from having moved through the pandemic?
That's a great question, and something our board of directors has frequently asked our executive team. There are several things. Operationally, we had to figure out how to pivot. I know it's an overused word, but instead of just depending on our traditional agency network distribution system, we had to overlay this system of direct service, which was new to us. But we had a plan in place during the government shutdown in 2013 to do something similar. So we weren't caught totally by surprise with that. We were pretty prepared. So we were able to usher that in very quickly. At first, a few little bumps we had to iron out, but we had tremendous partners like Central Church and the Just One Project and many others that stepped in to augment that with us. So we learned how to do the model differently. We are now looking at even the possibility of having an expansion where we do what we call a teaching pantry somewhere in our city where there's an underserved area where we can bring other partners in and show them best practices for actually doing a pantry. And so we're looking at that possibility.
Wonderful.
The stewardship was an opportunity of a lifetime. 15,000 new donors. That's where I've probably spent 80% of my time just calling and thanking these incredible people.
And you did get help from Washington.
Yes, we did. Yeah, absolutely. We got some of the CARES money, which is helpful, and the PPP loan. Can I tell two quick donor stories?
Yes, please, absolutely.
I called one lady in late May, and she answered the phone, and I could tell she was elderly and surprised to hear from me. But she had sent a nice gift, and I told her who I was, and I said, I want to thank you for providing what was the equivalent of 3,000 meals during this crisis. And she just, you could feel her smile over the phone. And she said, well, it wasn't too long ago that I was depending on Meals on Wheels myself. And she said, I've always tried to save as much money as I can, knowing that at some point I would be able to help someone else. And she said, this was the time. And she said, you're the first human that I've talked to in 2 months. And I was like, oh my goodness. We had a 30-minute call, and by the end of that call, I was tearing.
Imagine.
But just to think that she was medically fragile, homebound, had been
And
on the
alone.
edge, and she was thinking, alone, isolated, but she was thinking about other people and not just herself. So that's when I'm just like, wow. So another young woman came in about early summer, and she said she handed $35 cash to the receptionist at the front desk. She said, I was in your Boulder Station drive-through distribution last April, but she said, I'm doing a little better now and I want to give back. And so you just hear those stories and it's inspirational. I like to say, as a person of faith, God must smile when it's confusing who's giving and who's receiving. Because I think in this sort of relationship that we have, as the deacon talked about with philanthropy, people oftentimes say, oh, look what you do. You have such a wonderful job. You're helping so many people. And I'm like, sometimes I think I do it maybe for my own happiness, because I get so much joy out of doing this, to be at the center of your calling and to be able to go do this every single day in a city that appreciates and supports what we do. That 10 years ago, when I met you, I had no idea this city was so eager to embrace new people and to make it so much better, and to just offer up, what do you need? And so Three Square has been the beneficiary of that, and we flourished. You've been generous, Mayor, and your team here at the city. They've done so many things. When Brian
so
Knudsen was here, it's like so many things have happened that have made the delivery system better. So thank you.
Well, I just, you do look. I think there are people that don't think how much better it feels when you try to help.
Oh, yeah.
When you get up in the morning and you don't need people standing up and clapping for you. You need to just look at yourself and say, wow, that felt so good. Who else can I help?
Right.
What can I do? And certainly Three Square is exemplary of the passion, compassion,
Thank you.
willingness of this community. You've nailed it, because that's who we are. People wonder about us and our diversity. We are one of the most diverse communities in the entire country. We have an award for it, for the large cities. And that diversity, when we look around at the problems that are going on in the world, this is a loving, caring community. And for our young people growing up, you need to understand it's time to get involved. Get down to Three Square or Catholic Charities or somewhere, because just to take and have it all, you will never feel more whole and more peaceful than when you get involved. And I looked at all those places where groceries were being delivered, and I thought, oh my goodness, all these growers in California, now that our hotels are closed, I hope they remember to keep delivering over to Three Square. We have just, oh my goodness, I'm out of time again. This is not, we're just going to have to do more, because I want to know about the campus growth in your future. So you are coming back. We're going to do this. And, there's so much in this man and his team and the volunteers. 50,000 people have spent pieces of their lives involved and feeling good. So I know there are 50,000 people out there that can't wait to get back. And so if June 1st is the day, please make sure that is the day. And thank you at home for watching. We'll see you next time for another episode of Hello, Mayor.